Tell them how we met. We met. It was a mutual friend that was moving.
Yeah.
He was helping her move, and I came over and saw them helping us move, and we just started talking. And he had these experiences in the church where he had gotten burned by the church, and so he wasn't all that excited about this church stuff, like at all. And so we began to talk to him about what we were doing, what we were all about, and he said, "Okay, I'll give it a shot." But that's about it. He just said, "I'll just give it a shot." He wasn't really interested in that church stuff no more, because he had gotten burned by people at the top and had fully committed to doing the things that people who are serious about church would do. So I'm sure you can probably relate to that. But he was like, "Hey, I go to work and I find something else to do. Forget this church stuff." And he came, and he's never left.
Amen.
And he's never left. That's been over 15 years ago. He's never left. He came and he never left. You're talking about a songwriter, vocalist, bass, drum, construction. All of this stuff is bottled into one. All this stuff is bottled into one. Great songwriter. And it's still in him. So at some point you'll see it come out of him. A great songwriter. He's recorded. He also has done that and was out there in Hollywood where they were trying to take you down. To get these record deals where you do stuff, a lot of the wrong stuff, and he left.
True.
Because they were out there set to go on the big screen. But because some of the things they were asking to be done, he's like, "No, forget that." So that was how he ended up back here in the loop. In the loop. Did I catch it all?
Yeah. We put a CD out. They were playing on the radio, so we felt pretty proud. But
use that mic.
But it was pretty proud of what we had done. But what it was, it takes a lot to do that. So we went doing a little tour around St. Louis, and we were seeing what we were going to do. But at that point, it got to see a lot more than what we thought it was. But praise God. Praise God.
He had some great vocalists who were misfits at the same time.
We all were.
Yeah.
We all were.
and come to understand that it was never about the individuals, that it was about him, and that's what makes it a challenge. What makes it a challenge in our walk, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that. So he's one, and then you're probably missing the sound if you've ever tuned in before, missing the sound of the saxophone. And the gentleman, Amos, who were playing the saxophone, we asking that you all would be prayerful for him, because he is in the hospital now and has been there since last week. So just to be prayerful for him. You don't need details to know how to pray for someone. If somebody's in the hospital, your prayer is that they're better and out.
Amen.
Better and out. All right. That's all you need to know. You don't need details. God, deliver, raise them up, get them out of there. That is the deal. You don't need to know how, why, what, when. All you know is better and out. Better and out is the real deal, and that is our prayer. And then at the same time, this is a gentleman who was raised up an example of being in the hospital, not even knowing who he was. He did not know who he was. And the Lord raised him up and got him out. He was just physically there. He did not even know. He could not have told you his name. And the Lord has raised him since then. And the reason why I know, because I was there. I was there to witness it. Now, he didn't even know his name. You would have asked him, "Is your name Gerald?" He could not have answered it. He would have just looked at you. He would have just looked at you. Because he didn't know. He didn't know. And the Lord has brought him back to where he's able to show back up, start to work and has gotten promotions without even trying, without even thinking, without even asking. They just kept watching and said, we need to move you up. No, we need to move you up again, and you need to take some time off. You got so much time. We don't want you to show back up for a while. That's what God has been doing. And all he was doing was just going there, and they kept saying, no, you don't need to come in here tonight. We need to send you back because you need to take some time off. So God moved him from not even knowing who he was to giving him a name. And if he'll do this for him, he'll do it for Amy. He'll do it for you and anybody else that you know. That's what we got to know. So we praise God for that. We praise God for that. So you never knew what was going to happen when you get up here. Right? And he just had a flashback while he was up. He almost started running. He almost took off running.
Hallelujah, Lord. Knock cameras down. Right?
Thank you,
Lord. So I'm proud of God.
Yeah. Yes, Lord.
I'm proud. I had a stroke over 10 years ago, and they found me in front of my house.
Thank you,
I didn't know
Lord.
where it was at.
Joy. Hallelujah.
Till I woke up in the hospital. And everybody in there, my family, I asked the nurse, I said, who are they? What do they want? And I didn't know. Didn't know who they were.
My God. Testimony. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
So I learned about having strokes. Those strokes really damage a lot of things. And I had to learn everything from the beginning to now. He can bring you up.
Yes.
10 years ago, I couldn't drive. I couldn't walk. My arms couldn't move. And I got my motorcycle, and riding and back.
Thank you, Lord.
But thank God.
Thank you, Jesus.
Thank you for that.
Amen.
Thank you, Jesus. Yeah.
In Proverbs 3, it emphasizes trust in the Lord with all of your heart.
Yes, sir.
And then lean not unto your own understanding. In other words, don't even think about it.
Yes, sir.
In all your ways, acknowledge him. And then as a result, he will.
Yes, sir.
Not that he'll consider. He will direct your path. But the condition is trust in the Lord.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
With all of your heart. In other words, don't leave room to not trust him. So in other words, if you're going to trust me, you don't have a backup plan.
Yes, sir.
Because if you got a backup plan, then you don't trust me.
I like that. Yes, sir.
He said, take everything else off the table. If you're going to go for it, then you go for it. And so God has had to take us to a place to understand what he means. Oh, he'll let you do what you do. He'll let you utilize all of the things that he's endowed you with. He'll allow you to engage all the resources, all of the people. But when it all boils down, what he's interested in is to say, do you trust me?
Yes, sir.
Do you trust me? He said, you can use these other resources, you can engage other people, but I don't need to be in competition with you trusting anything else more than me. Because if that be the case, you had a backup plan.
Right.
And he says, now you don't need a generator. You don't need a backup generator when it comes to him. When you want power, he said you don't need a backup generator. You just need to stay flicking this switch and leave it on. And don't take it off. So look at your life and start to ask yourself, where are you now? How much of your life has been centered around not trusting him? When you verbally said that is the case. When you had something in mind as to what you wanted to do and how you wanted to get it done. And then when it wasn't moving the way you wanted to move it, at the pace you wanted to go, it wasn't turning out the way you wanted it, then suddenly you felt like you had to do something. Have you ever been there? You feel like you had to do something to make sure? Now, I mean, it's like if you cook it all, you cook, and if something requires a certain amount of time to get it done, you can turn the heat up as much as you want to in that oven. The heat is not what makes it done. It's the time that it's going to take. And some of us get confused by turning up stuff instead of letting the time go for it to be done properly. Now, it may have the appearance of done with the heat going up, but down inside it's not, because it hasn't had a chance to do what it needs to get done. So don't get in a hurry. So if you're hungry, then you probably don't want to have something that takes a while to cook. Go get you some junk and deal with that in the meantime. But in Luke chapter 5, Jesus began to give an example. So in Luke chapter 5 and then also in John chapter 21, a picture of when he says, do you trust me or do you trust you? Starting at verses 1 through 11 in Luke chapter 5.
So it was, as the multitude pressed about him to hear the word of God, that he stood by the lake of Gennesaret and saw 2 boats standing by the lake. But the fishermen had gone from them and were washing their nets. Then he got into one of the boats, which was Simon's, and asked him to put out a little from the land. He sat down and taught multitudes from the boat. When he had stopped speaking, he said to Simon, launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch.
Notice what he said. He says, now, you're doing okay. Now, notice the process. They had put their nets up, and they were doing something else because they were done for the day, really. They really were done for the day. And after Jesus began to teach from the ship, then he says, I want you to go out. I want you to do something that you don't even understand. Now, verse 5, listen to what he says to him.
But Simon answered and said to him, Master, we have toiled all night and caught nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net.
Now, notice he said, we've been doing it the way we know to do it, with all the things that we have at our disposal, and we've come up empty. So in other words, he's saying, I really don't think you know what you're talking about, but simply because it's you and you asked me to do it, I'm going to do it. He said, because I don't. He said, I don't believe it because I understand. This is what they do. And you know how it is when you think you're good at something, that you automatically know what the answer is? Now, this is their business, their livelihood. These are professional fishermen who know how to catch fish, when to go, how long to stay, everything else. And this was not a good day. This just was not a good day. They cleaned their nets and ready to go. And he said, look, now you asking me to do this. We already been out here. He said, we toiled all night. Now, in other words, it wasn't just out there talking. It said, we were trying to catch some fish. And we came up with nothing. We've been working hard with nothing to show for it. It don't seem like anything is turning out right. But he said, because you asked me to do it, I'm going to do it. Okay, verse 6.
And when they had done this, they caught a great number of fish, and their nets was breaking.
Notice. Their way meant nothing.
Right.
The outcome wasn't what they had intended. Now, they were hopeful that what he's asking them to do now is what they thought their own plan would bring to pass. But then he said, it was so many that their nets began to break. Verse 7.
So they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both the boats so that they began to sink.
Now notice it. When God blesses us, I notice what he does. It's never for you.
That's right.
It never starts. It's not just for you. It's not an exclusive party that you're having. That God is saying, when I do something, when I move on it, when you do what I tell you, there will be excess. There's always going to be more than what you need. Because part of the evidence that God has moved on your behalf, you've got something to show for it, to be able to say to somebody else, I want you to experience this too. It won't be just having a bragging rights about what God has done and only you have experienced it. He says, no, you're willing to allow others to experience the overflow of what he's already done. Notice what they did. Hey man, y'all come on.
Right.
You all come on. And when they got there, they still didn't have enough room. The boat began to sink. It said, you still got too much.
Yep.
Now, they should have called somebody else. When they realized theirs was going down, they should have spread it even more. That's why some people have too much bread that it goes bad, it turns moldy. Because they held on to some things too long. That's why some clothes dry rot. Because they're not used. And we're trying to hold them for special occasions. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Wise and full.
And that's why sometimes you never return back to what they held on to. Hello. Never did. Because you didn't release it. Verse 9. Verse 8.
When Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord."
He recognized, when I look at me, and then I look at you, then I realize I don't belong in your presence. He said, when I think about me, and I think about you, I'm not even worthy to be in your presence.
Right.
But still you let me
Right.
into your presence. Because Jesus called him into his presence. So in other words, so when you put it in context, you have to say, none of us are worthy to be in his presence, but he still lets us come.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Amen.
So he says, don't lose sight of the fact is that nothing we could do is not of works that could qualify us. He says, no. That still would not be good enough, because Isaiah 64:6 said, all of our righteousness is as filthy rag. So then when I think about that, I don't even belong in his presence. I shouldn't have the right to say, our Father in heaven.
Yes, sir.
Verse 9.
For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish which they had taken.
Now notice it said now. In order that they were so shocked, because what it is saying is, in all their fishing lives, they had never caught that many before. Because they were astonished. They were overwhelmed with. Now, if this was familiar, they would not have been so overwhelmed.
Right.
So what it tells you is they were so overwhelmed by what they had experienced. Like, we haven't been like this before.
Right.
They had been going out catching enough, and then going home, and it's like, whoa, what is this? And then now, verse 10.
And so also were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon.
Now notice, they're partners, so they had a fishing business. These were partners. And so together, it still meant they said, listen, together they had never had a day to resemble this day before. They found something out. Okay, pick up at verse 10 again.
And so also were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid, for from now on you will catch men." So when they had brought their boats to land, they forsook all and followed him.
Now, so he says, when God moves, it gives you the perspective, because he said, oh, if you think that was something, you haven't seen anything.
Right.
If I be lifted up, I'll draw men.
Yes, sir.
Unto me. He said, just like that net, these fish were drawn. Notice it. The fish were drawn to the net. It wasn't where they threw it. It was because he said, throw it. Do you get this? He's where he said, throw it. They were drawn to it because they had already been there before, and nothing showed up. So he said they were drawn to the net. The net was there, and they started saying, this is where we belong. So in other words, God knows how to get to you, what he want to get to you, if you do what he says. And then he says, if you do that, then he will promote you to a higher level where you'll realize that seek ye first the kingdom of God is now what matters, and all the other stuff won't matter, because you know he would have already shown you all these other things shall be added if you seek first, because the kingdom is about winning souls to Christ. He says, so when that becomes your dominant thought, he said, oh, I can get all this other stuff to you because that won't compete. He said, because I know that won't compete. So I can trust you with stuff now. All the stuff that you were pursuing, he says, I can trust you with it. When I elevate you, now your perspective is you want some lost soul to come to know Jesus Christ.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, God can get a nickel or dime to you anytime. You say, I want more than a nickel or dime. Well, what do you want? He can get that. It's just like there's a gentleman who's a part of, and I'm just doing everything up here. It don't matter though. There's a gentleman who's a part of a group, a golf group that I play with. His business is, brother, there he buys auction cars. And any day the dynamics of his overflow could occur. It was one day he was scheduled to play. And an hour before then he says, I can't come because there's a $58,000 deal I'm about to sign. Well, at that stage, golf was irrelevant. You follow me? He was about to sign on this. On any day, it could be like that for him. Like any day. And he's a giver. Are you following that? This is a giver. So one of his toy cars is a 1950 Cadillac with 58,000 miles, natural miles on it.
Wow.
The untouchable. Dark black. Heavy white walls. The real white walls. You know, the white wall that cover the old tire.
Gangster white wall.
Are you following what I'm saying? The gangster white wall. Whereby, listen, he could take 3 of us and lay us down in the trunk. Because those are the kind of vehicles Mafia drove, so when they wanted to dispose of bodies, you just get here in this trunk. Where nobody ever know you're in there, so they can toss you in the river after a while. Trunks that size.
Wow.
In other words, he doesn't care anything about money. And if God will do it for one, he'll do it for somebody else that he can trust with what he wants to do. And then this last passage in John chapter 21. And we'll start at verse 1.
After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. And in this way, he showed himself.
Now he had already been to Calvary. He had already been resurrected. And he's coming back again to say something to them. Okay, keep going.
Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others of his disciples were together.
Now you notice, Peter's in this crowd, and those same 2 sons that were just talked about in Luke 5. Same one, James and John. Same one they were talked about. Okay, keep going.
Simon Peter said to them, I am going fishing. They said to him, we're going with you also. They went out and immediately got into the boat, and that night they caught nothing.
Notice here we are again, right? This is not a repeat story. This is altogether different. They're going out again at night because they know that's when the fish play, greater possibility of catching them. And they went out there all night and they came back again empty-handed, doing their own thing. Doing their own thing. Now, how many times have you found yourself chasing something you couldn't catch? Wanting something you couldn't have?
Wow.
They caught nothing. They were sincere. They were serious. And just being sincere and serious don't get results. There's a lot of sincere and serious people. The Jehovah's Witnesses are serious and sincere. Are you following that? The Mormons are serious and sincere. And the list goes on. They're serious and sincere, but on the wrong track.
Right.
Okay, keep going.
But when the morning had now come, Jesus stood on the shore. Yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Then Jesus said to them...
Hold on. Now remember this. He came back to them looking the same way that he left. He didn't have a new body. No, and well, let's just say by appearance, other than being transformed, he looked like he looked before he went to Calvary.
Yes, sir.
Okay, keep going, and you'll see as it goes along.
Then Jesus said to them, "Children, have you any food?" They answered him, "No."
Notice again. They said, like, look, we've been out here all night. We ain't got nothing. We starving to death. We ain't got nothing. And in other words, they said, no, we ain't got nothing. He said, notice, he said, do you have any? They said, we ain't got nothing. We ain't got nothing. Now, have you noticed that even during the COVID, how God's provided for his children?
Yes, sir.
Hallelujah.
All right, okay, keep
Thank
going.
you, Lord.
All right, keep
Yes,
going.
thank you,
Keep
Lord.
going.
Thank you, Lord.
And he said to them, "Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast, and now they were not. They cast, and now they were not able to draw it in because of the multitude of fish.
No, same one. He said, you don't have anything. He said, but let me tell you where the excess is. Now notice, he didn't say the left side. He didn't say the front. He didn't say the back.
Right.
He said, throw it on the right. And it said throw it out in front of you, or toss it back over your head, or throw it to your left. Specifically said, on the right side.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Isn't that deep?
Yes.
He didn't just say throw it out there. Specific enough to say, this is how I want you to do it.
Yeah.
All right, verse 7.
Therefore, the disciples whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." Now when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he had removed it, and plunged into the sea. But the other
So hold on. I said Peter got no shame. He was naked out there fishing. He was out there fishing naked. Can't picture that. Because these are homies. They out here all the time. They do this all the time. And he just said, if I'm going to do this, I might well be comfortable, right? So you know that, because you know, men have to be very comfortable around men because they ain't doing that.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
For a variety of reasons.
Right. No sugar there.
No. For a variety of reasons, they're not gonna do it. The one they thought they come up in their locker room. I mean, you can have a locker room person out there. They ain't doing that. Nobody walking around like it's a fun town. They're not doing that. But okay, back over here. Let me get back in here.
That's right.
They ain't walk around like that. And they don't do a whole lot of bending over at their locker. Let me get back over here. Let me just get back over in here.
Like you the only one there.
Hey. Because they don't know what's coming around the corner. Okay, back over here. Let me just. But in other words, Peter was he had to put his clothes on. Said, I better dump in this water. I better do this. All right, keep on.
But the other disciples came in the little boat from there were not far from land, but about 200 cubits, dragging the net with fish. Then as soon as they had come to land, they saw a fire of coals there, and fish laid on it, and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish which you have just caught."
Now notice it. They're coming, and Jesus already had some fish being prepared that they didn't catch. He says, I prepared a table for you.
Come on now.
That all you got to do is come and dine.
Come and dine.
He said, I've already got this prepared. I just want to give you more than you needed when I told you to throw it on the right side. I got plenty for us to eat.
Thank you, Lord.
But this you can take with you, and you don't need a doggy bag. He said, this you can take with you, because I've already got the meal prepared for us to eat.
Yes, Lord. Thank you, Father.
Verse 8.
You said verse 8?
Let's do that again.
Okay. But the other disciples came in the little boat from they were not far from land, but about 200 cubits, dragging the net with fish.
Notice what it said, dragging it.
Dragging it. It was
It
full.
wasn't like they could pick it up and walk with it.
Wow.
When it says dragging it, when you drag something, it's because it's too heavy to carry.
Yeah.
You're taking pressure off yourself, but you need to move it somewhere. Now these fishermen, these are strong men. They used to carrying stuff, but it was more than they could carry. Keep going.
Then, as soon as they had come to land, they saw a fire of coals there, and fish laid on it, and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish which you have just caught."
And notice he said, some of them, because we're going to make sure. Keep going.
Simon Peter went up and dragged the net to land, full of large fish, 153, and although there were so many, the net was not broken.
Notice that.
Thank you, Lord.
Now, how many people who love
Thank
fishing
you, Lord.
would be able to say, I caught 150 something at one time? At one time. Now, they lie about fishing. There are always fish tales about the one that got away. But for you to say I caught 100 plus simply by throwing my net over in a few minutes. So in other words, when God moves, it defies the logic, because Isaiah 55 says, my thoughts are not your thoughts, my ways are not your ways. As high as the heaven is above the earth, that's the way that it is. So in other words, God will compound your confusion with how he responds. Because here's what that means. Too many times, we're trying to figure out why God moved the way that he did instead of embracing what he's doing.
Amen. Amen.
You start looking at something over here saying, I don't see how God did that. I don't know how he did that or why he did that. But then when you look at what he has done, you don't have an answer other than to say, but God. When God moved, he has not left room for you to say, well, God did A, and then he did B, and then he did C. That's a plan. That's not God. God super rules. He transcends the ability to plan. That's why it says he is able.
Yeah.
It says he is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all. It said literally only he is able to do.
Yes, Lord.
So in other words, he said you will not have an answer for how he did it because it already overruled your ability to think to that space without an objection.
Oh, no.
You know how in the courtroom, the attorney say, objection, and the judge says, overruled. Well, when it comes to God, it's like, well, I know God did this. He says, overruled.
Come on. Yes, Lord.
He said, what you're saying right now is irrelevant. This is my courtroom. In other words, this is my Father's world. So when he says, I want to do something the way I want to do it, can't nobody tell me how to do it when I want to do it. And can't nobody put me on hold. When he says, when I want to do something, I get it done. He said, all I want is for somebody to ask me.
Amen. Hallelujah, Lord.
And then finally, for the moment, in Luke 12:32, it says, fear not, little flock. It is his good pleasure to give you the kingdom. In other words, he gets excited about seeing his children excited. Why don't y'all come on up? He gets excited about seeing his children excited. So he always wants to do something so you'll brag on him.
Yes, Lord.
Yes.
Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Whom the Son he has freely. Clap your hands, rejoice and sing. 'Cause you are Lord of everything. You are Lord of everything. I will bless the Lord. Bless the Lord at all times. I will bless the Lord. Bless the Lord at all times. For the Lord our God is great. Perfect Lord in all your ways. God of mercy, Lord of grace. Holy One, Ancient of days. Holy One, Ancient
He has done great things for me, so I will. He has done great things for me, so I will. He has done great things. He has done great things. He has done great things for me. 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 So I will bless the Lord. Bless the Lord.
Yeah.
That song was actually one of the
Amen.
songs that Brother Gerald introduced to
Hallelujah.
the fellowship.
Amen.
And everything. So,
Amen.
if we say we're going to bless him, the words only validate the life. The life without words gives credence to the fact that now you can say something. It 1 Peter 3 says, sanctify the Lord God in your heart so that you're always ready to give an answer as to why. And in the meantime, if your life is ragged, keep your mouth shut.
Yes, sir.
Our time is up, and thank you for yours.
Thank you, Lord.